Hi, Layla. Hope you are feeling better very, very soon. I'm so sorry you have not been feeling good this whole week. That is a super bummer, and hopefully you are turning the corner real soon here. All of your videos are fantastic, so I'm not really surprised because when you only have a week in between lessons, you still come back and everything is super improved and looks great and sounds wonderful and all of the good things, and you've had quite a few weeks. So yeah, everything is really looking wonderful. So we'll kind of just go through everything here one by one. I do want to remind you to either have your mom help you or to take notes for yourself as you watch this the first time. That way you don't have to go back to the video and double check something. You don't have to worry about forgetting stuff because now maybe in a few days you're starting to not remember exactly everything that the video went over. So it just helps to have that instead of the practice notes that I normally write out for you, just something you can glance at and make sure that you're remembering everything you want to do. So I do recommend doing that. Of course, you don't absolutely have to. You can always just check back on the video from time to time or as you need to, but it's definitely helpful in making sure that you're not forgetting stuff as you go throughout the week. All right, so theory, we'll tackle that first. We had pages 7 and 8, and you did a perfect job, so nice work there. For next week, we are gonna do page 10. So page 10, let's see. Sorry, my book is falling apart. So we're continuing working on our rhythm here, but this time we're gonna focus on a specific time signature. And for page 10, that means we're working on 6/8 time. So they remind you at the top, the 6/8 time signature means we get 6 beats per measure, and this time the 8th note gets 1 count, a little bit different from what we usually see. Usually we've had 4 on the bottom, which means the quarter note gets 1. But they give you a lovely little chart here. Yay! Which reminds you of how the notes and rests will break down by beats in 6/8 time. So now instead of a quarter note getting 1 count, the 8th note gets 1 count, which means the quarter note actually gets 2, the dotted quarter gets 3, and the dotted half would get a full measure, all 6 counts. The rests are kind of interesting. We would use an 8th rest for 1 count, a quarter rest for 2, a dotted quarter for 3, but remember when we rest for a whole measure, we use the whole rest. Even though it's not getting 4 counts or the number of counts that a whole note would get, we still use the whole rest to rest for a whole measure. The little box to the right of that at the top of the page, this is just letting us know that sometimes 6/8 time doesn't feel like 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Sometimes we do what is called subdividing, and we actually group the first 3 eighth notes together and then the second 3 eighth notes together, and we count it like 1, 2, 1 and a 2 and a. So it's still the same number of eighth notes, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, but we really kind of emphasize beats 1 and 4, and we think of it a little bit differently. We're not going to worry about that for right now. I'm just letting you know that's what that's showing you there is an alternate way to count and to feel 6/8 time. For right now, we're just going to stick with labeling 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 for our eighth notes, okay? So what you're going to actually do, there's nothing to do for number 6. Number 7, you're going to write in the counts below the rhythm example there. They're giving you some rests in there as well. Nothing super crazy. I don't think anything will be too trippy for you. But you want to just, again, make sure all of your numbers line up as close as you can with the beats that they come in on. And then on number 8, we are going to label our counts again, but we are missing the bar lines. So you'll fill in your counts and your bar lines. Number 9 is a short melodic example for both hands. You're going to write in your counts for this one. When you come back on Friday, we may or may not do this as kind of a sight reading exercise. We'll just kind of see how we're feeling that day and possibly do that. I don't know. It just kind of depends. So you can practice playing it if you'd like to. You don't have to. Either way, it'll be fine if we choose to do something with it. If you do practice it, we'll really focus more on the rhythmic element than the sight reading. And if you don't practice it, then we'll make it a sight reading exercise. So again, we may not even get to that in our time next week. It kind of depends. But if you'd like to look at it, you can. If you don't feel like it, that's totally fine. So with this one, you don't have to write in separate counts for the top staff and separate counts for the bottom. If you just write them in between the two staves there, that is perfectly fine with me. You only need to do it once because it's the same rhythm. So that works for me. If you want to write it out twice, knock yourself out, but I don't need you to do that. Okay, that should take care of page 10. Next, I wanted to go over the sonatina next because I think we ran out of time for that last time I saw you. So the recording that I got for sonatina, excellent dynamics and phrasing. Again, not really a surprise, but it's just really, really consistent, which means that you're most likely playing it that way every single time, which is exactly what we want, right? We don't want to kind of have a default that's boring and all the same volume and no real expression in that. And then if we think really hard, we can kind of get some dynamic changes in there and try and make it more musical. No, we just want that all the time, right? We want that to be the default, and for you, I feel like it is. So really nice job with that. The ending has really improved. Really nice work there. That's looking much more confident, much more accurate. And I think for this week, sorry, I thought I could read my handwriting from all the way down there. Nope. So for this week, we're gonna look for any of those spots in the last few lines that are taking up some extra time for us to get set still. Now you've reduced them greatly. So we have very few places where we do have to kind of pause and take the extra time to make sure your hands are in the right place, make sure you have the right notes, all of that kind of thing. We've not only reduced the number of spots that we need extra time, but we've reduced the overall time total as well. So we've made really, really good progress there. The last thing to do is to just shore up those gaps wherever we still have them. There's really not that many. I think the biggest one was going into the second to last line. Oh, look, I turned to the right page. Fabulous. Okay. So what I'd actually like to do, we'll see how accurate I can get it, is I'm going to play the last 3 lines of the sonatina, not counting the repeat, of course, from that middle section there. But I'm just going to play from measure 23 to the end. Again, forgive me if I have some things in there that you're going, oh, that's not right. You're probably right. You know it better than me, most likely. But I want to show you just to get an idea of what that rhythm should feel like as far as the transitions. Okay, so from measure 23, here we go. Okay, so you get an idea of how some of those are just going to feel a little bit faster than what we already have. Your rhythm really overall is great. I think it's just the little bit of that hesitation still in a few spots, and like I said, very few of them even left still. So really, really excellent job on that. That's really the only thing to kind of be keeping in mind as you practice this week, to be looking for any of those hesitant spots on the last few lines and see if we can get that a little bit more on time. You have something to reference if you need it as far as the timing goes, but I think you will be just fine. Nice job. Okay, the D cadence. Beautiful, perfect, easy. I think instead of starting some new technique for this week, we'll kind of have an easy technique week. It's more of the same rhyming than I expected. And so what I want you to do instead is just add the pedal to your chord changes. You may have even been doing that and just forgotten it for the recording. Either way, we'll just pedal the chord changes for the D cadence. We'll keep it kind of easy. You don't even need to really practice it every single day that you practice. I think you won't have much of a problem including that. I'll hear it next week with the pedal, and then we'll start something new together, because the next thing we're going to start is a new 2-octave scale. It's actually one of my favorite scales to play, and it's I think it'll be more beneficial if we can go through that together in person. So we'll keep it easy, do the D cadence one more week, pedal the changes, good to go. On to our composition, our sonatina piece. I am so impressed by what you have done with this idea. It's so, so good. Okay, so I loved all of your changes. We did a great job incorporating that 3/4 feel with the newer section. I love how you made it staccato, and then you kind of had this return a little bit to the higher end with that original melody. It worked so, so well. So really, really good job. The only other thing that we could do with that, if you'd like, is to add one more movement. So traditionally, a third movement of a sonatina tends to be fast and lively. We tend to have the original, which is usually some sort of medium fast tempo, or not the original, but the first movement, kind of establishing the main theme. The second movement sometimes changes time signature or key signature and tends to slow down, have a different feel. A lot of the time, if your first movement is in 2/4 or 4/4, the second movement will be in a different time signature, either 2/4 or 3/4 or something that's different from the first. Okay, so the third movement, again, frequently has a different time signature, sometimes has a different key signature, but coming off of a slow movement, it tends to be zooming away. So it's kind of a fun conclusion to a multi-movement sonatina to have something that ends very fast and lively and playful and fun. It kind of gives you that, oh, that was a fun performance. You kind of forget that you've been listening to a song now for 12 minutes and it's all the same song. So, no, I'm kidding. But it can be kind of a fun way to end that. So I think that what you came up with stands extremely well on its own for the two different movements. If you want to keep it there and end it with that, I think that's a perfectly reasonable option. Another reasonable option is to add now a third movement to kind of make it a 3-part piece instead of a 2-part. So if you are interested in that, if that's something you'd like to do and explore for this week, we can kind of start digging into that a little bit. The only criteria I would give you is to dive into the fast and lively idea. So we can even still be utilizing a lot of our main melody if you would like to, and transforming it by the tempo. So that opens some other doors as well, right? We can also achieve different effects based on how we use repetition. So because we're increasing the tempo, we are able to kind of use repetition in a different way. Maybe instead of just going through the melody or a section of the melody once, like if that's what we would normally do, maybe now we go through it 2 or 3 times, or we go through it first and then we play it in a different place, and it still takes the same amount of time as when we would normally play it in the first movement. You also have the potential to maybe go a different route with major or minor ideas. So anything that was major in the first couple of movements, maybe we turn those to minor chords and make them super fast. It's going to give you a different feel and a different effect altogether. So we could go that route. We could completely change the register of the piano. We're using some low end, but we could totally camp out in the low end of the piano on this one, right? That would be a very different effect, especially if it's now all of a sudden very fast. So a lot of possibilities there. It really depends on what you're comfy with and what you kind of are inspired by for yourself once you start playing around with some ideas. So again, that's optional. If you want to give that a try this week, great. We'll touch base on that together next time. If you are happy with it as is and think that's a good place to stop, very cool. I'm not going to give you a new prompt this week if that's the case. If you want to come up with something totally independently, I'd love to hear it when I see you next time. Otherwise, if you decide you don't want to do a third movement, we'll come up with a new prompt when I see you next week. Okay? I know that was a lot of talking about the composition. Okay. I love what you came up with. So again, it's just up to you what you want to do with it next, or if you're ready to move forward onto something new. All right, let's see. Oh, right, I forgot. There's one more thing. Okay, so remember, this is an easy thing to incorporate, but with a sonatina, traditionally we do have a noticeable pause between the movements. This includes, often in performance, if you're performing a sonatina that's multi-movement, you will actually behave more like you finished the piece. So at the end of the first movement, you'll let that linger if you have a fermata or if you choose to stylistically, and then you'll do your hand lift, hands in your lap, and you'll kind of sit there for a couple seconds. The idea is we're letting that first movement settle. We're letting the audience digest it, prepare to hear something a little bit different now, but it's not like we're all wildly applauding and you're getting up and taking a bow and introducing a new piece. It still functions together as a whole, but we do want a noticeable gap there. So that's the other thing I wanted to bring up is our two movements are wonderful. We just want to make sure we remember, if this is the context we're putting it in, that we have a clean gap. That means we're not holding out the pedal, we're actually removing the hands from the keyboard, and then we are starting fresh with the second movement. Okay, there we go. Now we're really moving on. So next, let's talk about Sunken Island. You finished the dance together. I'm really not even surprised anymore. I'm just excited. So awesome job doing that. Your phrasing and dynamics, once again on this one, completely beautiful. It just works so well. And it really looks like it's coming together from a comfort perspective as well. So this is just fabulous. Nice job on the rhythm on page 3. That has also improved as well. I think the next thing I really want to do with this is to start memorizing, which you believe you've already done. Again, the first 2 pages especially, I think you probably have quite a bit, if possibly not even all of it, already memorized. So let's shift our focus to memorization this week, now that we've covered the whole thing and you already got it all hands together, and we've got our dynamics, we've got our phrasing, it's wonderful. And so we'll shift a little bit more into performance mode with this one, as we continue to get that ending up to the same level of comfort and familiarity as the first few pages. We'll also be focused on memorizing. Great job. Okay, Monday morning blues. So awesome job fixing the first and second endings on this one. I did want to grab the book for this one. Yes, that is way better from last time. So what we had talked about with how that first ending and second ending work together and how they move into each next section, you've done a really nice job getting that more accurate here. That looked great. So, oh yeah, and the dynamics on this one too. Really a lot better. You can hear a lot clearer of a difference, and this may even be a little thing that's just because of playing on a different piano. It may be that you're still always playing it the same way, but when you're here, the dynamics kind of transfer a little bit differently. Usually it's easier to have more extremes on a digital keyboard than on an acoustic piano, because on an acoustic, the keys are generally harder to press. So you have to work a little bit more to get the louds to be quite as loud and to have quite as much fine tuning in your dynamic variation. Whatever the case, I really loved how you played your dynamics on this one in the recording. So let's keep that up because it sounds wonderful. The only thing I think I wanted to do with this one this week was to actually have you revisit the YouTube recording that I had sent you for this one. In the second page, right after the second ending, there's a couple little tiny spots in there where I think either the rhythm is just slightly different, or I think there was one spot even we maybe forgot one of the left-hand quarter note intervals. So rather than kind of dissect that little by little, I think it would actually just be more beneficial for you to revisit that recording, kind of get that fresh in your ears again. And this is really just for the last 3 lines of page 2. So it's not like you need to, I mean, you can listen to the whole thing if you want, but. Okay, having some storage issues. I hope that was fixing it, and it's still recording longer than it was before, so it appears that took care of it. Okay, anyway, sorry about that. So, let's see. This is a couple times now that I've done this part. Okay, so I think where I left off was you don't need to listen to the entire recording unless you would like to, of course, that's fine. But what I'm really caring about are just those last 3 lines on the second page. Just so, again, I think it'll be more useful to hear it from an audio perspective rather than, okay, on this measure, this beat, this hand, change this. You know, sometimes that's efficient. I think, again, just like listening to a recording was helpful with getting the rhythm on the first page with this piece, I think it'll be helpful in this section as well. I think that'll be the most efficient approach. So I also recommend having the book in front of you as you listen to it. If you're gonna listen to it a few times, you don't have to follow along every single time, but it can be helpful to follow along at least once or twice so that you see what you're hearing on the page. Okay, so that'll help make more sense if there's something that you're not realizing that you're missing or that you're playing a little bit differently. I think hearing and seeing it together will end up being the most helpful approach. So, I'm still kind of nervous it's going to cut me off here. So let's see. When you come in next time, we will get back to our Minterval challenge. We will probably be ready to start something new. Definitely continue working on the sonatina composition if you decide to do a third movement, or starting a new composition prompt if we decide not to do that. And then the only other thing I want you to include this week, and you're really good about this for, I think, piano and for voice. I know definitely for voice, so I assume for piano as well. But just make sure that you are either starting or ending your practice with an older review piece that we're not really working on actively in lessons anymore. So we always have something that's kind of familiar, and it's good sight reading practice sometimes if we have kind of forgotten an older piece a little bit and we have to jog the memory with the sheet music. And then it can also just be nice to remember some of those older pieces that you really enjoyed and want to still be able to play. You know, if you haven't played it for 6 months, it's going to be a lot harder to remember, and it's going to be a lot more work to get that back into the comfort zone than if we're reviewing it every so often. So it doesn't always have to be the same piece. It can be if you're really feeling a particular review piece for a little stretch, but whatever is best for you, just make sure you're including at least one of your older pieces at the beginning of your practice or at the end each day. Okay, I'm gonna go put these videos together, get that sent to you. And again, I hope you're feeling lots better. I'll get you a voice lesson video on Monday. If you're feeling up to it, Saturday or Sunday, you can send me some vocal clips of the solfege and our 2 songs. I don't need a recording of of a warm-up. I'll still send you new warm-ups for the week either way. And I will most likely be doing that Monday morning, so I need to receive it before Monday, okay? If not, if you're still not really up for singing, that's totally fine. I'll still send you a good amount of information in the lesson video on Monday, but if you are feeling up to it, I just need that by Monday, and then we'll be good to go, okay? Feel better soon. I will see you next week. Bye-bye.